You know, sometimes it's not a lengthy treaty or a formal declaration that changes everything. Sometimes it's just one social media post. We're going to break down how 4 simple words may have just redefined a relationship that shaped global politics for decades.
Just 4 words. That's it. Enough is enough. So stark, so simple, and completely unambiguous. Now, before we even get into who said it and why, just let that phrase sink in for a second. In the world of diplomacy, where everything is usually coded and carefully worded, a statement this blunt, it's like a bombshell.
And there it is, the full post. On April 17, 2026, President Donald Trump put this out on Truth Social. Now, this wasn't some leaked memo or a comment caught on a hot mic. This was a public declaration, out there for the entire world to see. And that, right there, is what makes this so incredibly historic.
Okay, so to really get why this is such a huge deal, we have to look back. We need to understand what a massive break from the past this really is. The importance isn't just in what was said, but how it was said. It's a total departure from decades of diplomatic tradition.
This is where it gets really clear. I mean, look at that word, prohibited. That is not how the U.S. talks to an ally. That's the language of authority, the kind of stuff you say for adversaries like Tehran or Moscow. For generations, any disagreements with Israel were always handled behind closed doors, through quiet, careful diplomatic talk. This statement just, well, it completely shatters that distinction.
And to put a number on it, we are talking about a 78-year-old precedent. 78 years. Ever since Israel was founded, no American president has ever crossed the public line like this. That is almost 8 decades of established diplomatic protocol just gone.
And this history of restraint held firm through some seriously major global events. I'm talking about the Suez Crisis back in '56, the whole end of the Cold War, and even in more recent years when there were some pretty intense disagreements. The U.S. always kept up a certain public front. Sure, there were frustrations in private, you could bet on that, but never a public ultimatum like this one.
So what's the big idea that this statement really takes aim at?
Well, it strikes right at the very heart of what's been the bedrock assumption of the U.S.-Israel relationship for more than a generation.
It all comes down to this one concept: the U.S. as Israel's ultimate guarantor. Now, that's not just some fancy phrase. It's the core principle that has shaped military strategy across the entire Middle East for decades. The unspoken rule has always been that when push comes to shove, America is the final backstop. We're talking advanced weapons, diplomatic cover at the UN, the whole 9 yards. Trump's post doesn't just question that guarantee, it draws a brand new, very public red line around it.
Now, you can bet a statement this explosive was going to cause some immediate fallout. So let's take a look at how different parts of the world started reacting right after it dropped.
And the responses were all over the map. In Tel Aviv, you had political circles that were, let's say, very unsettled. Among the analysts, people were split. Was this just a tactical move to get something done quickly? Or was this the start of a much deeper, long-term change in strategy? And then for a lot of people watching in Gaza and Lebanon, the moment had this huge symbolic weight. It felt like a sign that maybe, just maybe, international pressure can actually start to build up.
And it's so important to remember this didn't happen in a bubble, right? This statement landed at a time when public opinion around the world, especially in Europe, was already shifting, already becoming more critical of certain Israeli policies. So this post just pours gasoline on that already evolving global fire.
All right, so that brings us to the biggest question of all. What now? I mean, the words are out there. You can't unpost it. And that forces us to stop just analyzing what happened and start thinking about what it all means for the future.
And this is really the multi-billion-dollar question that, frankly, no one has the answer to yet. Are we looking at a genuine, fundamental turning point in one of the world's most critical alliances? Or is this just a wild, temporary blip, and things will eventually drift back to the way they were?
But no matter what comes next, here's what we know for sure today. A line that for decades was maybe only whispered in private meetings has now been spoken out loud, publicly, and in a way that no one can ignore. And that simple fact, all by itself, changes everything.